I never thought that a simple mistakenly sent screenshot could change my life forever. At first, it was just an Amazon order for the kids, but then my eyes caught an unfamiliar name, an address I didn't recognize. My heart tightened. Something felt off. As I followed the trail, the truth became clearer than ever. My husband wasn't just lying about his business trips, he was indulging in romantic getaways with another woman. But what he didn't know was that I had a plan of my own. I had always trusted my husband. For years, his frequent business trips never raised any suspicion in my mind. I believed his long hours, the late-night flights, and the out-of-town conferences were just part of his demanding job. But all of that changed in an instant, with a single screenshot. It was an ordinary afternoon when my phone lit up with a message from him. "Just ordered some things for the kids. Let me know if we need anything else." Attached was a screenshot of his Amazon order confirmation. I smiled at first, scrolling through the list of familiar items, books, toys, and winter clothes. But then at the bottom of the image, something caught my eye. A delivery address. A name I didn't recognize. For a moment, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a gift for a family member, a work colleague, but something in my gut twisted. The name wasn't one I'd ever heard him mention before, and the address was across the country, far from any of our relatives. My fingers hovered over the screen as doubt crept in. Curiosity turned into unease. I opened a new tab and typed the name into Google. Nothing. No business profile, no connection to his work. Then, with my heart pounding, I took a step I never thought I would, checking his search history. What I found made my stomach drop. Flight bookings, hotel reservations, dinner spots. All for the same city, the same name, over and over again. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the endless proof staring back at me. He hadn't just traveled there once, there were multiple trips hidden under the guise of work. I wanted to stop. I wanted to close the laptop and pretend I never saw any of it. But I couldn't. I needed to know the full truth. My pulse raced as I checked his emails, his payment history, his saved itineraries. Every click uncovered another betrayal. Luxury hotel stays, intimate dinner reservations, and worst of all, messages. Messages that left no room for doubt. "Counting down the days until I can hold you again. I can't wait to see you in what I bought for you. This trip will be even more special than the last." My breath hitched. I wasn't just looking at a casual affair. This was deeper. More deliberate, more cruel. My husband, the man I had built a life with, had been leading a double life, right under my nose. The weight of the discovery pressed down on my chest, but I stayed silent. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I sat there gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had uncovered the truth. Now, the only question left was, what was I going to do about it? My hands were still trembling as I sat in front of my laptop, staring at the messages I had just read. The words blurred together, but their meaning was clear. My husband was living a life I knew nothing about. A life filled with deception, secret trips, and another woman. My chest felt heavy, but I forced myself to stay calm. If he could lie so effortlessly, then I needed to be just as careful. I closed the tabs on my browser and took a deep breath. I needed proof. Not just suspicion, not just a few messages, but undeniable, irrefutable evidence. Something he couldn't talk his way out of. With a sense of determination, I started digging. I went back through his emails, scrolling past work notifications and newsletters, until I found what I was looking for. Confirmation emails from hotels, flight tickets, and dinner reservations, each one tied to his so-called business trips. Then came the receipts: luxury suites, champagne, spa packages, candlelit dinners for two. My fingers clenched the mouse as I clicked through each purchase. How long had this been going on? How much of our money had he spent on her? I opened his credit card statements next. My heart pounded as I scanned the transactions. Flights to cities I had never been invited to, expensive jewelry from a boutique I had never heard of. Then, a Venmo transfer, her name right there, along with a message that made my stomach turn. "For something special, can't wait to see you in it." I felt sick. My body was numb, but my mind was racing. I wasn't just dealing with a brief moment of weakness or a careless mistake. This was planned, thought out, repeated. He had built an entire secret world for himself while coming home to me like nothing had changed. How many times had he kissed me goodnight after being with her? How many times had he lied straight to my face? I needed more. Unlocking his phone wasn't an option. He always kept it with him. But his work laptop? That was different. He often left it at home when he traveled. My fingers hesitated for a second before I opened it, typing in the familiar password. The moment I accessed his email drafts, I knew I had hit the jackpot. There, unsent but carefully composed, were love letters, plans for future trips, lists of gifts he wanted to buy for her, an entire itinerary for an upcoming getaway, one far more extravagant than any trip he had ever taken me on. I didn't cry, not yet. I was past the point of shock. Now, I was focused. I had everything I needed, every flight booked, every reservation made, every dollar spent. I started saving copies, forwarding screenshots to a private email. 4 weeks. That's how long I spent collecting everything. 4 weeks of pretending everything was fine. 4 weeks of smiling at him over dinner while knowing exactly where his heart really was. I wasn't just gathering evidence, I was preparing for something bigger. He had no idea what was coming. For 4 weeks I lived a double life, just like him. By day I was the devoted wife he thought he had fooled. I cooked dinner, kissed him goodbye, and listened to his fake work stories with a nod and a smile. But at night, when he was asleep or distracted, I was someone else entirely. I was the investigator, the strategist, the woman he never saw coming. Every reservation, every purchase, every hidden message. I had it all. But having the truth wasn't enough. I needed him to feel it, to experience the same gut-wrenching, world-shattering pain he had inflicted on me. And for that, I needed a plan. It had to be flawless. I thought about confronting him right away, screaming at him the moment I uncovered his affair. But no, that would be too easy. He would lie. He would twist the truth. He would promise it was a mistake, say it meant nothing. I needed something undeniable. A moment where he couldn't escape, couldn't hide behind excuses. That moment would come on his next trip. The moment he mentioned his work conference, I knew. He wasn't even trying to be creative anymore, just recycling the same old lie. I nodded, feigning interest, asking just enough questions to seem supportive. Where was it again? How long would he be gone? I made sure he felt comfortable, completely unaware that I already had his itinerary saved in a private folder. The night before he left, I prepared everything. On the surface, it was just another suitcase packing night. I watched him fold his clothes, listened as he casually told me he'd miss me, knowing full well he was counting down the hours until he could see her. I smiled. Let him believe I was oblivious. Then, when he was asleep, I made my move. A 10-page letter. Every detail of his affair laid out in black and white. Every email, every transaction, every lie exposed. I poured my fury into those pages, but I didn't just write about what he had done. I wrote about what it meant. How it shattered everything I believed in. How I saw him now. How after this he would never see me the same way again. And then, I hid it. Not in an obvious place where he might find it before he arrived. No, that wouldn't do. I carefully taped it inside the lining of his suitcase, pressed flat against the fabric where it would stay unnoticed, until it was too late. By the time he found it, he would be in another city. With her. In the middle of his carefully planned fantasy. And that's when he would realize he had never been in control of this story. I was. As I zipped up his suitcase, sealing my letter inside, I felt a strange sense of calm. The stage was set. Now, all I had to do was wait. And when the time was right, when he thought he had gotten away with everything, I would send the message that would change everything. He thought this trip would be a dream. He had no idea it was about to become his worst nightmare. The morning of his departure felt like any other. He kissed me goodbye, his hands lingering just a second too long, as if he were trying to sell the lie one last time. I smiled, playing my part perfectly. If only he knew. I watched from the window as he loaded his suitcase into the car, the very suitcase that held his fate. A strange satisfaction settled over me. He was walking straight into his own downfall, and he didn't have a clue. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, I sprang into action. I checked my phone. His flight was on time. He'd arrive in a few hours, meet up with her, and fall right into their usual routine. Romantic dinners, stolen kisses, whispered promises. The thought made my stomach twist, but I pushed the emotion aside. This wasn't the time to break, it was time to finish what I started. I sat down at the kitchen table, phone in hand, heart racing with adrenaline. My fingers hovered over the screen as I composed the message that would set everything in motion. A simple group text. To him, to her. Both of them, together. Hope you two enjoy your trip. There's a letter waiting for you in your suitcase. Happy reading. I stared at the words, letting their weight settle. One tap of my finger and everything would change. He would know. She would know. Their little fantasy would crumble in real time, but not yet. I glanced at the clock. He was still in the air. Still blissfully unaware. No, this message had to arrive at the perfect moment. Right after check-in. Right when they were getting comfortable. Right when he was least expecting it. So I waited. Every minute felt like an eternity. My mind swirled with images of him arriving, greeting her with open arms, laughing in the back seat of a cab as they headed toward their luxurious getaway. Did he feel guilty? Even for a second? Or was I nothing more than an afterthought in his double life? The thought burned, but I reminded myself. The pain was temporary. The reckoning was coming. Then, finally, my phone buzzed. A simple notification. Flight landed. I exhaled slowly. It was time. With steady hands, I reopened the message. One final glance. Then, with a calmness that surprised even me, I pressed send. And just like that, the countdown was over. Somewhere, in a high-end hotel lobby, my husband's phone would light up with my message. His heart would stop. His perfect weekend would begin to crack. And soon enough, he would unzip his suitcase, reach inside, and find the truth waiting for me. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my phone. The silence stretched between us, between me and the man I once thought I knew. I didn't need to see his reaction to know. I had already won. The message was sent. There was no turning back. I placed my phone on the table, staring at it, as if it held the power to transport me to that very moment. To see the exact second their world shattered. Seconds passed. Then minutes. My heart pounded with a mix of nervous anticipation and fierce satisfaction. I knew exactly what was happening. Somewhere in that luxury hotel, my husband's phone had just vibrated. Maybe he glanced at it absent-mindedly, expecting a work email or a casual text from me, the wife he believed was still oblivious. And then, he saw it. I pictured the color draining from his face, the subtle tension in his jaw as he reread my words, hoping he had misunderstood. But no, the message was clear. There was no escape. Then the real panic would set in. Would he excuse himself, step away from her under the guise of taking an important call? Would his hands tremble as he reached for his suitcase, fingers fumbling with the zipper as he tore it open? Or would he try to keep his composure, forcing a smile while his mind raced, desperately trying to think of a way out? And her? She must have seen it too. The mistress, the woman who had welcomed him into her arms without a second thought for the wife and children he had left behind. Would she look at him with wide eyes, silently asking if this was some kind of joke? Would she check her own phone, only to find that I had sent her something special as well? A 10-page letter. I imagined the moment his fingers brushed against it, hidden beneath his clothes, a time bomb waiting to detonate. Would he hesitate before pulling it out, or would he rip it open, scanning the words in a frantic rush, searching for a way to convince himself this wasn't real? But it was real. Every word, every painful, humiliating truth laid out for both of them to see. I clenched my fists, my nails pressing into my palm. Right now in that room, everything was changing. Would he call me? Beg for forgiveness? Would he try to deny it, even with all the evidence staring him in the face? Or would he sit there in silence, knowing that there was nothing left to say? My phone remained still. No calls, no messages. He was drowning, and I was finally free.